Okay, so have you ever been working on something super important and suddenly your brain just like checks out?
Oh, yeah, all the
It's
time.
the worst. And that's what we're diving into today. It's this
Mm.
Healthline article called "Why Am I Unable to Concentrate?"
I feel like I need to read that one.
Right. We all need it
Yeah.
because we've all had those moments.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it might not just be, stress or too much coffee.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There's
Yeah.
probably a lot more to it.
Well, the article says there are actually a ton of surprising things that can mess with our focus.
Really? Like what?
We'll get this Cushing syndrome.
Cushing syndrome.
Yeah, it's a hormonal disorder that can really make it hard to concentrate.
I've heard of it, but I never really thought about the concentration thing.
Well, apparently, when your cortisol levels are too high for too long, it can lead to all kinds of problems like fatigue and anxiety.
And trouble concentrating.
Exactly. It's like your brain is
Yeah.
stuck in overdrive, so it's hard to focus on anything else.
Makes sense. What other conditions does the article mention?
Oh, there's another one that's pretty interesting. Multiple sclerosis.
MS.
Yeah, and this one is an autoimmune disease that attacks the central nervous system. And cognitive issues like trouble concentrating are really common with MS.
Wow. So if you're dealing with a chronic condition like that, it's definitely something to keep in mind.
Definitely. It's always a good idea to talk to your doctor if you're having any weird or worsening symptoms, especially when it comes to your brain.
Absolutely. Better safe than sorry.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you know what else the article mentions? Even some medications can affect our concentration.
Really? I would have never thought of that.
Me neither. But apparently even common medications like stuff for allergies or acid reflux can sometimes mess with our mental clarity.
Huh. So like every allergy pill is going to make me spacey.
Not necessarily every single one, but it's something to watch out for. It's always a good idea to read those labels carefully and chat with your doctor about any potential side effects, especially if you notice any changes in your focus.
Yeah, good point. You don't want to just pop a pill without thinking about it.
Exactly. And speaking of pills, the article also mentions that benzodiazepines, which are often prescribed for anxiety, can also affect concentration. How do those work exactly? Like, what are they doing to our brains?
Well, they basically enhance the effects of this neurotransmitter in the brain called GABA.
GABA.
Yeah. And while that can be helpful for reducing anxiety, can also make you feel a little sleepy and interfere with things like concentration and memory.
Ah, so they kind of calm the brain down a bit too much for optimal focus.
Exactly. And it's not just benzodiazepines. Opioids, which are used for pain management, can also have a big impact on concentration. They can make you drowsy and just slow down your thinking.
Okay, so we've got medical conditions and medications as these unexpected concentration culprits.
Okay.
I'm guessing the article also talks about the usual suspects like sleep and diet.
Oh, for sure. But it goes deeper than just the basics, which I was happy about.
Oh, good, because
Right.
I think we've all heard a million times that pulling an all-nighter isn't going to help us ace that test.
Right. So what I found interesting was it talked about the benefits of antioxidants for brain health.
Antioxidants, like blueberries and stuff.
Exactly. Apparently, they can protect your brain cells from damage.
Really? So it's not just about avoiding the bad stuff, but actually adding in things that are good for your brain.
Yeah. Think berries, dark chocolate nuts, even green tea, all packed with antioxidants.
I can get behind that. Dark chocolate is my weakness.
Yeah.
But what about exercise? Does it mention any specific types that are good for focus?
You know, it specifically mentions yoga and Tai Chi.
Really? I wouldn't have
Yes.
thought of those. Why those two?
Well, they both focus on mindfulness, deep breathing, and controlled movements.
Yeah.
And that combination can really help with concentration.
So it's not just about getting your heart rate up, but also about that mind-body connection.
That's it.
This is already making me rethink some of my habits. What else did the article have to say?
Well, we can dive into some more practical strategies for improving focus.
Oh, perfect. Because I'm ready to learn how to take back control of my brain.
Well, let's talk about that right after this.
All right, so we've talked about some of the unexpected things that can affect our concentration. But now I want to know what we can actually do about it. What are some practical ways to get our focus back?
Well, one of the easiest things you can do is just try to minimize distractions.
Oh, yeah. That's easier said than done.
It is. But we seriously underestimate how much our environment affects our ability to focus.
True. Like, I'm totally guilty of trying to work with my phone buzzing and the TV on in the background. It's a recipe for disaster.
Right. And all those little distractions, they really add up. The article suggests doing what they call a distraction audit. So basically just look around your workspace and see what's pulling your attention away from what you're trying to do.
So like putting my phone on silent and maybe finally cleaning up my desk.
Exactly. Even small changes can make a big difference. And the article also talks about this thing called time blocking.
Time blocking.
Yeah. Have you heard of that?
I don't think so.
It's basically working with your natural attention span instead of against it. So you set a timer for like 25 or 50 minutes of focused work, and then you take a short break.
That's actually a really good idea. I always try to just power through, but then I end up getting distracted anyway.
Yeah,
So it's probably better to just plan for breaks.
right. And during those breaks, get up, move around, stretch, grab a healthy snack.
Speaking of snacks, does the article say anything else about what we should be eating to help with focus?
Yeah, it talks about choosing foods with protein and complex carbs.
Okay, why those?
Well, they give you a more sustained release of energy, so you don't get those sugar crashes that can make you feel foggy.
Makes sense. So instead of reaching for a bag of chips when I'm feeling that afternoon slump, I should grab some Greek yogurt and fruit.
Perfect example. Or some nuts and seeds. Those are good too.
Okay, so we've got minimizing distractions, time blocking, and smart snacking.
Yeah.
Anything else we can do to boost our brain power?
The article also mentions mindfulness meditation.
Oh, meditation. Does that really help with focus? I feel like my brain is always going a mile a minute.
Well, the idea is that with mindfulness, you're basically training your brain to notice when it's wandering, and then you can gently bring it back to the task at hand.
So it's not about stopping those distracting thoughts altogether. It's more about recognizing them and choosing where to focus your attention.
Exactly.
Huh.
And like any skill, it takes practice. The article suggests starting with just a few minutes a day and gradually increasing the time.
That's good advice. Start small. It seems less intimidating that way.
Oh, of course, we can't forget about sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sleep is so important. I'm definitely not my best when I'm sleep deprived.
Right. It affects everything.
But what if you're doing all the right things, like getting enough sleep, eating well, managing distractions, and you're still having trouble concentrating? At what point should you see a doctor?
That's a good question. I would say if you've tried those lifestyle changes and you're still struggling, it's definitely worth talking to your doctor. There could be an underlying medical issue that needs to be addressed.
Okay, so what are some red flags that might mean it's time to see a doctor?
Well, if you're also having other symptoms like memory problems, headaches, dizziness, or trouble sleeping, that's definitely a sign to get checked out.
Okay, that makes sense. What about just feeling mentally exhausted all the time?
Oh.
Or like you have brain fog?
Those are also good things to talk to your doctor about. They could be signs of all sorts of things like hormonal imbalances, nutritional deficiencies, or even just chronic stress. Your doctor can help figure out what's going on and recommend the right treatment.
Okay, good to know. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about surprising causes, practical tips, and when to seek help. But before we move on, I'm curious what personally helps you stay focused.
You know, for me, it's all about routine. Waking up and going to bed at around the same time each day really helps me feel more balanced and energized.
That makes sense. I feel like when my routine gets thrown off, my focus goes out the window too. Do you have any other tips or tricks?
I also try to take regular breaks throughout the day, even if it's just for a couple of minutes to get up, stretch, or step outside for some fresh air.
Those are all good reminders. And I think it's important to point out that finding what works best for you might take some trial and error.
Absolutely. It's not one size fits all.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to touch on something the article briefly mentioned, ADHD. How does that affect concentration? It seems like it's more than just, not being able to focus every now and then.
Right. It's not just a situational thing.
Exactly.
ADHD is actually a neurodevelopmental disorder.
So it affects the brain's wiring.
Yeah. The article makes a good point that it's not always about being hyperactive, though.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. There are different ways it can show up, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's more nuanced than just, being fidgety.
Right.
There's the inattentive type, where people might zone out easily or have trouble following instructions.
Okay.
And then there's the hyperactive impulsive type, where it's hard to sit still or control impulses.
And some people have both.
Exactly. It can be a mix. But the point is, it's not just about trying harder.
Right, because it's literally how their brain works.
Yeah. And the good news is that there are treatments that can help. Both medication and therapy can be really effective.
That's good to hear. And it just goes to show that concentration problems can have a lot of different causes.
Definitely. Sometimes it's our surroundings, sometimes it's our lifestyle, and sometimes it's something like ADHD.
And knowing the root cause is key to finding the right solution.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has honestly been so eye-opening. We've learned about some pretty surprising things that can affect our focus and gotten some great tips for improving it.
I think the biggest takeaway is that we actually have more control over our focus than we think.
I agree. Whether it's changing our environment, using those time-blocking techniques, or talking to a doctor, there are things we can do to sharpen our focus.
It's all about understanding those causes and taking action.
Well said. And on that note, we want to leave you with a final thought. What's one small change you can make today to boost your focus?
That's a good question.
It could be something as simple as turning off your phone notifications or taking a quick walk during your lunch break. Even small steps can make a big difference. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay focused, and keep diving deep.